There are places in the world that were built to never stop. In the 20th century, many industrial complexes were built with a single purpose: to produce more quickly, and for longer than ever before. They became symbols of progress, provided jobs to thousands of people, and powered the economy. In these factories, raw materials are turned into vehicles, energy, steel, food, or fuel. These are tough and difficult places. They are huge, noisy, and designed to operate continuously without rest. But when a factory this big shuts down, it doesn't just disappear easily. What remains are structures too big to forget, communities that lose their former sense of purpose, and cities that are forever changed. Along with this, there are places that slowly deteriorate as each year passes. In this video, let's discover the 10 most haunting abandoned factories in the world, from the industrial ruins of Detroit to an abandoned whaling station in the South Atlantic. But before we begin, if you're new to our channel, please click the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell so you'll always be updated with our latest videos. Packard Automotive Plant, United States. At the beginning of the 20th century, Packard was one of the leading luxury car brands in the United States. Their vehicles were known for being elegant, luxurious, and well-crafted. And in 1903, the company built a factory in Detroit that seemed to show what the future would look like. It was designed by the architect Albert Kahn. The East Grand Boulevard Complex, a modern factory that later expanded and became an industry in itself. This is a city made of brick, steel, and cement. For many decades, thousands of workers entered its gates every day. This is where vehicles, parts, engines, and military equipment were made during the Second World War. The factory became one of the symbols of Detroit during the time when the city was still developing alongside the automotive industry. But the former prestige of Packard began to decline after the war. Competition grew stronger, the company weakened, and in 1956, the last true Packard left Detroit.
Small businesses followed. Temporary warehouses, fires, theft, and eventual abandonment.
Over the years, the former factory became a vast area filled with broken windows, damaged walls, and hallways covered in rust. A place built as a symbol of progress eventually became one of the most famous industrial ruins in America. Great Gritviken Whaling Station, South Georgia. In a cold bay in South Georgia, surrounded by mountains, wind, and water, you can find the rusty and abandoned remains of the Great Gritviken. Now, it looks like a community frozen in time in the middle of the South Atlantic. But at the beginning of the 20th century, it was one of the busiest whaling centers in this part of the world. The station was established in 1904 by Carl Anton Larsen, a Norwegian captain who saw a huge opportunity in those waters. For many decades, ships would leave to hunt whales and return with animals weighing tens of tons, which were dragged to the shore to be processed. The blubber was turned into oil, the bones into fertilizer, and the meat into animal feed. Great Gritviken became a small but busy town. There were factories, tanks, boilers, warehouses, and living quarters. At the height of operations, the noise of the machines echoed across the bay and the smell of processing spread everywhere. But when the whaling industry began to decline, the station lost its purpose. It was closed in 1960 and completely abandoned, along with the ships docked on the shore, the empty warehouses, and the structures slowly being eaten away by rust. The place that was once the center of slaughter and processing of animals is now a quiet ruin, where penguins and elephant seals walk among its rusty machinery. Hornofor, Belgium in Charleroi, one of the former industrial centers of Belgium, the Hornofor still stands. For many years, this blast furnace was part of the iron and steel industrial hub in Wallonia. a region known for coal, steel, and factories. It could produce around 6,000 tons of pig iron each day. The metal made here was sent to the rolling mills in La Louvière and Quebec for further processing. As part of a massive industrial chain that depended on the continuous heat of the furnace, the plant was severely hit by the steel industry crisis in 2008. Operations stopped and there were several attempts to revive it, but eventually the entire complex was completely abandoned. Now, the towers. These rusty walkways and pipes still stand like a gigantic machine that was suddenly shut down, a structure built to withstand extremely high temperatures. But now it has become a massive metal ruin in the gray landscape of Charleroi. Pyramiden Mining Complex, Norway. In the Svalbard archipelago, far north of the Arctic Circle, there is a former Soviet mining town. It was built at the foot of a pyramid-shaped mountain. Pyramiden began as a Swedish-owned settlement, but it eventually came under Soviet control in 1920. After World War II, it became a coal mining colony managed by Trust Arktikugol.
During the Cold War, the place served as a small showcase of Soviet life on Norwegian territory.
There were apartments, schools, a hospital, a cinema, an indoor swimming pool, greenhouses, and a statue of Lenin facing the main plaza. Everything depended on the mine. Coal was the reason why an entire community existed in one of the harshest environments inhabited by humans in the world. The operation ended in 1998. Coal was no longer profitable, mining became more difficult, and the plane crash in 1996 made the situation even worse. The last residents left, and the buildings, furniture, machinery, and posters from the Soviet era were left behind. The cold and dry environment of Svalbard helped preserve Pyramiden like a time capsule. An abandoned mining settlement left between Black Mountains, ice, and the silence of the polar region. Kraftwerk Walkerode, Germany. On the banks of the Elbe River, in Saxony-Anhalt, the Walkerode power station began operating in 1938 as a massive plant that used lignite or brown coal. Its 4 chimneys dominated the landscape, so much so that the building became famous for looking like a ship stranded by the river. After the Second World War, some of its equipment was dismantled during the Soviet occupation. However, the plant was rebuilt and expanded in 1950 to meet the growing electricity demands of the German Democratic Republic. Later on, gas turbines were also added, and it even provided heat to the town through a pipeline that was approximately 15 kilometers long. With the reunification of Germany, many facilities in the eastern part of the country became obsolete, and the Walker-Walker was closed between 1994 and 1998. Concrete Central Elevator, United States. One of the most impressive industrial buildings in New York stands on the banks of the Buffalo River. This is the Concrete Central Elevator. It was built during the time of the First World War, when Buffalo became an important center for transporting grain from the Great Lakes to the eastern part of the United States. The complex was built between 1915 and 1917 on a massive scale. It is almost a quarter of a mile long, with 268 concrete silos, and can store 4.5 million bushels of grain. For many years, this building was an important part of a massive food supply system. But trade changed. The old routes lost their importance, and eventually the elevator was no longer used. By 1970, it had become a massive abandoned structure by the river. Now it remains like a huge, empty concrete structure. The movement of trains, ships, and workers is gone. Hearn Generating Station, Canada. In the Portlands of Toronto, near Lake Ontario, stands the Hearn Generating Station. It was built in the post-war era, when the city was growing rapidly and needed a huge supply of electricity for factories, trams, and new communities. The station began operating in 1951.
At first, it used coal and later switched to natural gas. It has a massive turbine hall and a chimney over 200 meters tall that can be seen from many parts of the city. At that time, it was one of the key parts of Toronto's power system. But it was also part of an industrial era full of smoke, pollution, and massive infrastructure built along the water. In 1983, it stopped generating electricity. Its interior was left empty, with the huge turbines, walkways, metal structures, and spaces so huge that they were later used for movies, events, and urban exploration. On the outside, it still looks like Horno could wake up at any moment, but its turbines have been silent for decades. Jupiter Factory, Ukraine. Outside Pripyat, inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone, there remains a factory that never quite matched the official version of what it was really used for. The Jupiter factory opened in 1980 as a branch of Mayak, a manufacturer from Kiev associated with audio equipment. Officially, it produced electronic components for tape recorders and household appliances, an industry suitable for providing jobs to the youth and educated residents of Pripyat. But Jupiter had another, more secret side. Some sources link the factory to the production of semiconductors for the Soviet military industry, as well as to workshops where robotic systems were tested. In a city built around a nuclear power plant, the factory served as a closed, technical, and mysterious facility. After the reactor explosion in 1986, Pripyat was evacuated, but Jupiter did not completely stop its operations. Part of the complex was repurposed as a laboratory for radiological research, including tests for decontamination and the development of radiation measuring equipment. Operations continued until 1996. Today, there are vacant warehouses, documents, technical rooms, and basements where dangerous levels of radiation still persist. An abandoned Soviet factory inside a ghost town, just a few kilometers from Chernobyl, La Marmora, Italy. On the southwestern coast of Sardinia, the ruins of La Marmora descend the cliff like the remains of an industrial amphitheater facing the sea. It was built in 1897 in a place that was once a mining center focused on lead and zinc. The ore was not extracted here. Instead, it was received here, separated, washed, and prepared before being shipped to other ports. Around it, you can see the furnaces, warehouses, and docks that form a complete work system situated between the mountains and the Mediterranean Sea. When the mining crisis came, the complex lost its purpose and was eventually abandoned. Now its open arches face the sea, while the stone steps and walls serve as reminders of an industry once built in one of the most beautiful yet harshest landscapes of Sardinia. South Fremantle Power Station, Australia. On the coast of Western Australia, very close to the Indian Ocean, the South Fremantle Power Station was built. Its construction began in 1946. At that time, Perth often experienced power outages, and the city needed a modern power station to support its rapid growth. The location was chosen for practical reasons. It had access to the railway for coal delivery, seawater for the cooling system, and it was close to the communities that would use the electricity it produced. Its boilers and turbines helped power Southwest Australia as the region continued to develop. The plant was closed in 1985 when other facilities became more modern and efficient, making it impractical to continue its operation. After that, the machinery was removed, the auxiliary buildings were dismantled, and the main structure was left empty. Over time, it became a massive concrete building by the sea.
Broken windows, large rooms, graffiti, damaged stairs, and hallways exposed to the salty air can be seen here. These factories were built to operate continuously without rest. For many years, they handled and processed countless tons of steel, coal, grain, minerals. energy, vehicles, and whale oil.
Communities, entire cities, trade routes, businesses, and settlements grew around them, all dependent on the continuous operation of these machines. But when the industry changed, many facilities were left behind. Some gradually disappeared due to economic crises, while others were lost because of accidents, pollution, war, or simply because the world that needed them ceased to exist.
Today, their ruins continue to tell a part of our history. In Detroit, in Chernobyl, in Svalbard, in South Georgia, or by Lake Ontario, some still remain standing.
These massive structures remind us of how much human activity can transform a place and how strange it is to see it after it has completely changed. Which of these abandoned factories did you like the most or find the most interesting? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to keep discovering the most fascinating places on our planet, subscribe to Noel Polo Television. We will continue to explore here.